Good afternoon, I'm Chief David Plessick with the Reynoldsburg Police Department. With me today is
Detective Nikki Riley.
I'm here to talk about our body-worn cameras. We began our body-worn camera purchase in early May of 2019. We wanted to have an accurate representation of what occurs out on the streets with our officers. The main reasons we have them are to film confrontations and evidence. And our officers find that our cameras are capturing much more evidence than if they just had to rely on their own memory of what has occurred. The cameras, we initially purchased 50 cameras. We're a 70 officer department, and that initial purchase price was about $30,000. And in the budget for next year is money to equip the rest of the officers with cameras. Detective, have we had any issues with the cameras that you know of?
Very few.
And the few that we've had are just basically what you would probably refer to as IT issues when it comes to playback. Sometimes we get an occasional freeze up, but generally the cameras have performed very well for us. The quality of the video is outstanding. The quality of the audio is outstanding. And so occasionally we'll have maybe a complaint on an officer or a felony arrest, and it's very important that we have an accurate picture of what happened as we document those actions. So now as a detective, do you also check those videos for evidence?
Sometimes we do. If a case gets turned over to us and we think there's something of value on there, we would definitely reference it.
So the officers are documenting what they do at the scene, and for the more in-depth investigation, our detectives are looking more into that video, and sometimes they do spot things that our officers have not initially discovered. The cameras that we use, they are activated by turning on a button. Can you show where the button is? So that momentary activation of the switch activates the camera, and then it records audio and visual. We also still have cruiser cameras, and those come on when the officers turn their beacon lights on the cruiser. So some of the incidents we actually capture with two different cameras at the same time. We do give the officers the opportunity to shut the camera off. There are situations we would not want our officers having a camera on, such as if a suspect or a victim is unclothed or something like that, or in somebody's house where they don't want us to film. We would understand that. But in general, our policy covers when the cameras are to be turned on, and our officers are following that policy.
I'm Chief Bobby Fisher with the Hilliard Division of Police. We've been investigating implementation of the body camera program and are looking at 2021 potentially for implementation of the plan. Body cameras do provide some significant advantages for law enforcement. Number one, transparency, but also in recording valuable evidence for police officers at the scene of an incident. The process that we have in place would require additional study for us to be prepared for presentation of a plan to our city council. And as we investigate further, we're looking at various manufacturers that can provide the equipment to us, and then how that process would fold out for our organization. Many of the organizations that have implemented body cameras have seen the need to increase staffing to accommodate the need for public records requests, and then of course the cost of the equipment generally, which we expect to be in the neighborhood of $500,000.
Hi, I'm Deputy Chief Jeff Lawless with the Gahanna Division of Police. I'm today talking about body-worn cameras. They're an item that's a common issue for public safety professionals today. One of the issues that we are looking at is the recent changes in the Ohio Revised Code that requires us to redact 26 different elements of any contact that we have with our citizens. These cameras are carried on our would be carried on our personnel on a day-to-day basis as they interact with our community members. So the privacy of our community members is our first priority. There's a lot of upfront cost and hidden cost into body-worn cameras. It's an issue that we evaluate on an ongoing basis as far as the cost-benefit analysis. At this time, the biggest cost that we have are the personnel that it takes to redact the elements from the recording so that we can provide a public record to people who request them. And any time that our officers have contact with the public, it is a public record. So the 26 different elements of redaction become an issue for us. We've worked with several software vendors trying to find one that will reduce our personnel costs. We have not yet found a vendor that successfully can do that to the point where we're not eating a lot of personnel costs to meet the needs of the community and public records. And there's also storage costs related to the amount of terabytes that it takes to store the data for these cameras that we're currently not structured to handle at this time. So it's an ongoing issue. We're continuing to evaluate it. We hope the technology at the back end catches up with the front end technology. That being said, at this time, we're not carrying body-worn cameras, and we see them as a valuable tool in our cruisers, because we do use in-cruiser camera videos. So we're hoping that in the future, the back-end technology will catch up with the front-end technology.
Deputy Chief Dan Kelso with the Whitehall Police Department. We purchased body cameras and went department-wide in 2018, July of 2018. We tested them for about 6 months, looked into a few different brands, settled on WatchGuard. And what we use is a mount that's a two-part mount that goes onto the officer's shirt. And this mount works by a piece going underneath and a piece going over top, just like this. That mounts onto the officer's shirt, and then it locks. It has a locking mechanism, so it can't be pulled off in a fight or anything to that effect. The camera then snaps on to that mount like this, and it locks into place with a locking mechanism at the top. The officer can then, there's a couple different ways to activate the camera. Your cruiser lights can activate the camera. We typically have that function turned off because we want a consistency throughout the department. So how we're using it right now is you just simply activate the camera by pushing this button. And now we're live. We can, this camera sees in kind of a fisheye bubble to show some peripheral vision, up, top, bottom, straight ahead. It's got a very wide angle to it. So then you just turn it off this way. Hit the same button, turns it right off. The officers are able to tag, preset tags to tell what kind of call that they were on. We found them extremely useful. The new law went into effect to protect citizens so that some of our footage is not releasable. If we go into a private citizen's house, we no longer have to give that footage up to the media so that you don't have to, show what the inside of your home looks like. If it's a very serious call like a sexual assault, that type of stuff is not releasable. Or maybe we go on a call where there happens to be a new body, that's not releasable. Now the person is actually protected by our new law, which is fantastic. However, we do have to release video to the media when we're in a public place and we're just doing our regular job. That keeps us in line. It also keeps accountability for citizens. They have to. We know now if they file a false complaint, we actually have video that shows that. And here in Whitehall, we've run across that situation on at least 2 different occasions where a blatantly false complaint was made against a police officer, typically by somebody who's drunk that didn't want to be arrested. Next morning, they wake up and they decide, hey, I'm going to get that officer in trouble. I'm going to say he touched me inappropriately. Little do they know they were a little bit too drunk, didn't realize that all 5 officers at the scene were recording everything. And that's a misdemeanor of the 1st degree in the state of Ohio. It's punishable by 6 months in jail. We've actually had 2 convictions out of that already. So holds the citizens accountable. It holds the police officers accountable because our officers are audited by their sergeants on a quarterly basis. Every single one of our officers that use body cam, we do a quarterly review audit in which their sergeant pulls at least 2 videos. We go through the video, we make sure that they're treating citizens properly, they're doing what they're supposed to on a call. So if this was a call where they should have been taking a report, should have been documenting, we're able to go in, look, and say, yep, that officer's doing everything right. Another really great benefit for this is for the court systems. Now we're turning over tons of evidence to the prosecutors that before it was just say, take the word of the police officer. This guy was stumbling and he was abusive and he was spitting at us and all this kind of stuff. When you actually see that, when you see how the person is treating the officer or maybe treating another person out of a fight, it has quite an impact on jurors and prosecution. It's a whole different level of prosecution. Aside from that, we've identified training needs. So maybe we watch a video and we say, you know what, the officer did not do anything wrong by using the force he did, but there's a better way. and maybe we look at videos and go, this is a training opportunity. We've used them in roll calls to say, look what this officer did. What would you do in that situation? Is there a better way to handle it? Not to embarrass officers, but officers get together and go, yeah, now that I watch myself, maybe how I approach that car, or how I did that, or how I talk to that person, when I actually see myself do it, I go, man, that didn't look as good as I thought in my head it was. So it's really all around, it's contributing to excellence in policing. That's what we're after at the Whitehall Police Department. We are after excellence in policing, and these have actually been a huge contributor to that on inside and out. Outside, the job we're doing, and inside on when we're evaluating and learning and getting better at our jobs.